All right, we've talked about the algorithm, all the things, at least some of the things that go into making the decision. So now in theory, you're behind the golf ball there, you're kind of ready to go, you've decided what you want to do and all the characteristics. Now we'll look at the physical, the pre-shot routine as it's done physically with the body. And again, this is individual. I don't have an exact formula that will work for you. You know, you're going to come in from behind the ball, obviously, and start to get in there. But I'll give you some principles, some things that I think you really want to get done in one form or fashion, or accomplish, if you like. And then develop it into your own style and your own routine a little bit, something that's comfortable for you and gets you in a good frame of mind. That's the key with the pre-shot routine. Once the decision's made, is this thing something you don't have to think about? Can you just flow into it? And does it get you lined up well, get you in a good relationship to the ball on a consistent basis? Let's look at a few things. So the first element to me of the physical pre-shot routine is learn to take your grip. And we're going to go with the lead hand. The left hand is a right-handed golfer. Learn to take it at your side. Not an absolute, but I think it's the best way to do it. And it's the best way to do it because when your hand hangs at your side versus in front of you, the hand doesn't point as much towards you. It hangs more straight on. I think it's a lot easier to line up the club face. This is an important thing as well. And this isn't a grip lesson. We can go to the building blocks for that, but just some thoughts about, shall we say, taking the grip here. I never look at the hand. I would not recommend that. When your hand is relaxed, that's its best place to hang. The fingers curl up. There's a natural space for the club to just fall in there under this heel pad. But the moment you look at it, you'll have to curl your hand under because you can't see inside your hand when it's relaxed. You'll flatten it. It complicates everything, and rarely, even if you put it there, will it stay in the right spot. So number one, take it at your side. Don't look at your hand and stretch your hand underneath it. Leave it as relaxed as possible. When I initially take it, I don't even grab the club. It's just resting in that cleft part of my fingers there. What I can do is I can see the club alignment down here without seeing my hand. And as I say, it's pretty easy. There's a natural spot. Club falls in there. I can check the alignment of the club. Once that's taken, I give it a little grip pressure, just a little squeeze. I can feel that heel pad on top. Then I bring it in front and put my other hand on. You'll see that a lot with great players on TV. Always loved Arnold Palmer's routine. Kind of stand there and bring that thing in front of him like that. So don't look. Lead hand first, take it at your side. Then kind of bring it in front of you and snuggle that right hand on there. So certainly alignment, obviously, that's not going to get a lot more critical than that in your pre-shot routine. And let's assume you've picked out a line that's appropriate for the shot you've selected, etc. You may, by the way, like the little intermediate target, some blemish on the grass on your target line, just out there in front of the ball a couple feet or so. A lot of people find that a little easier to line up to. Obviously, Jack Nicklaus is the guy that made that popular. That said, though, let's assume you know where you're trying to go. Here's the principle. Always line the golf club up, and then only really line yourself up in relation to the golf club. We'll talk about that here as we go. I don't recommend this. I'm telling you, I think this is poison. Line yourself up. I see people with the club up around their shoulders. First off, you're not supposed to be aimed directly at the target anyway. You should be aimed parallel to the target line. Secondly, this sort of looking over your shoulder trying to line up like that is very difficult to do. I just think it's a terrible way to go about it, and I don't see the great players do that. I see them put the golf club on, get it lined up, and then get themselves wiggled in. Now specifically, I would recommend stepping in with the trailing foot. That's of course the right foot for the right-handed golfer. And I would step in with that foot because it leaves the body in a more open to the target position. Once you get that left foot up here, you're really looking over that left shoulder. So again, you'll see this a lot on TV. Step in with the back foot, and once that club's lined up, then the other feet come in and sort of adjust and get set up there. I like to think of it, I've got this rod on the ground, you can see. If there was a wall right there in front of you, and someone said, can you face that wall almost exactly? You might be a quarter of an inch or a few degrees off, but basically that's not that difficult to do. So in your mind's eye, once you've drawn this nice line and you've got the golf club there, it's like the golf club's in space and I just address myself to it. Work on this a little bit. I promise you it'll save you so much aggravation. Now, certainly at the very beginning, if you haven't done it that way, it's going to take a little while to get used to it. One of the other things that takes a little while to get used to is in that first step, how close to get to the ball. I'm so used to it now. It's pretty natural for me to do that, but you can practice this at home. I mean, geez, you don't have to have a golf course in front of you to do this, and literally 10-15 minutes will make all the difference in getting you on the way. So golf club first, step in with the back foot, and only once the golf club's there, put your feet in position and line up to the club. Here's another thing I think is important. When you step in, as we've said, with that back foot, setting your body angles, step in a little bit behind the golf ball. That's my target line. That's perpendicular, slightly behind it. Play around to get what you want, but when you're behind it, your perspective of lining the club up is much, much better. You get in front of it a little bit and start trying to line up a club that's behind your eye line with something in front of it. It's not that easy to do. One other thing, I don't personally do this, but I've noticed some people that really had some success with this. They'll kind of measure off. Let's say I'm stepping in step to golf ball. What they do once they're set, they'll put that other foot there, and then they can more or less dictate ball position. In other words, if the ball's right between my feet, let's say it's a driver, I simply spread the right foot. Now I know it's opposite my left foot, as much as reasonably humanly as possible. Conversely, let's say it's a 9-iron, this is a 6-iron here, so I step right in step to ball, place the other foot, then I spread them evenly, and then I know, actually spread that one a little too far, but if I spread them evenly, I know that ball's in the middle, and so on. So you can kind of dictate ball position a little bit with that part of the routine too, if you like that. As I say, I haven't done that in the past sometimes, maybe I should, but it might be a great help to you. I know it's helped some really good players. Okay, so we're stepping in there, we're getting the club lined up. This brings to mind another critical principle. I just think this is something you see all the really top players do, and you should incorporate it in your routine too. And that is, you basically set or build your posture in that moment when you step in and put the club on the ground. Now, we're made as human beings, we're designed amazingly for almost a limitless combination of movements, and I could put the club down by rounding my back, I could put it down by squatting my knees. There's a lot of ways I could do. I could just extend my arms away from my body. Nobody that's great does that. They all, and you could try this at home right now as you're watching the video, if you stand up nice and tall with a good grip and your arms deployed hanging down against your body, your club won't reach the ground. It'll be a foot or so off the ground. All of these players use their bend to put the club on the ground. They create the proper bend as they do it. They don't just go over there and stick the club down there. You've got to work on that too. Again, it takes a little bit of work, but it's really not that difficult. I think you can work on it by standing there in front of a mirror, getting your posture there, and then practicing your setup, getting your posture without the club, practicing your setup, that kind of a thing. It'll get you in the right look, the right routine there. And again, it's just a critical way to get good posture consistently. It's so difficult to get set up poorly, then try to fix your posture. I promise you that. So you put the club on the ground with the correct bend. Who doesn't like Ben Hogan as a golfer? Certainly me. He certainly worked on this. Let me show you an interesting little snippet of video. So here's the great Ben Hogan. He's in South Florida. This is obviously when he's a little bit older, and he's demonstrating to this elderly couple who are filming how to get ready to hit the shot and how to go about it. And you just watch him. I'm going to pull this film back a little bit more. He goes through every phase. He walks up to the ball, he sets his right foot, then the club, then the left foot, then resets the right foot. Now he even does his waggles in slow motion. And what this tells me is he had thought this thing through. He had practiced this thing a lot of times till he could take it step by step by step. He even has the self-discipline here, as you'll see, to hit this ball in literally slow motion. I mean, you can see the waves rolling in at normal speed there. And just pops it along the ground a few feet there. So I think that's pretty amazing how he goes through his entire routine. And again, that demonstrates to me how much he's thought through that thing as he steps in, places everything in order, and goes through his routine. So finally, let's talk a little bit about waggling or staying in motion over the ball, and how about a trigger to get your swing started. To me, this is where you really see a lot of different ways to do it. You've got to do something that's natural and comfortable for you. We had sort of the Jack Nicklaus that was kind of a combination, sort of a waggle like this with a little bobble of the feet. He liked to do that. Obviously worked super well for him. I actually do it a little bit like that. The real reason why, if I'm honest with you, I was just a huge Jack Nicklaus fan growing up. Used to imitate him a lot. Kind of became natural for me to do it that way. I couldn't quite imitate his success, unfortunately, but I do it a little bit that way. I like it. Gives me a little combination of wiggling and staying in motion. You've got a Mark O'Meara who kind of rehearsed his backswing with his waggle. He had a certain thing he worked on with Haney and did it that way. Arnold Palmer was more of an inside waggle like that. They come in all shapes and sizes. The point being, find something that fits you, some combination of body or club movement that's subtle, calming, and just kind of keeps you in motion. and just do it that way. Swing triggers, the art of actually getting going is just as personal. Going back to Jack Nicklaus, and this isn't something I do, but Jack Nicklaus, right before he would start back, would kind of cock his head to the right, tighten his left shoulder just a hair, and it would just kind of be a go mechanism. Seen several great players over the years. Sam Snead certainly comes to mind, Bobby Jones a little bit, that were just a little kind of wiggle of the hips, a little forward wiggle and a go, just kind of got them going there. As I say, you see different kinds. Gary Player, another one of my many favorite players, right before he would go, he'd kind of kick that right knee and go a little bit. You don't have to have one. It could be a lot more subtle than that. You don't have to sort of consciously do one, but something to keep you in motion over the ball, a little something to get going is important. I'd say one other comment along those lines, the amount of looks you have at the hole kind of gives a trigger as well. I'm usually sort of a 3-look guy, so a 1 and a waggle and a 2, and it just kind of gets me in a flow and gives me a consistent time over the ball. Again, I'm not saying you have to do that, but I think that's another good way to do it. So these are all choices, all ways to get yourself free and get yourself moving. And to me, they're part of the physical shot, the physical routine that make up the pre-shot part of it.